right. Welcome back, everyone. Got yet another special episode with a family member here. Jess McPheters. You're McPheters, right?
I am a
Okay,
McPheters.
that's what I thought. I just lost my train of thought. Sorry. I'm looking at the snow outside. It's blowing like 40 miles an hour. It's sleeting. You can probably hear it in the window. And Jess is in San Diego. So I think part of that is just me thinking about your freaking view off the patio into the ocean and seeing dolphins come by. Um,
If it
I
makes you
just,
feel better, it's 45-mile winds here today, too.
yeah, well, at least it's not sleeting, I would assume. But anyway,
It sure is not.
Jess is my sister-in-law. She is the brother of Richard, who was on several episodes ago. So they grew up obviously in the same household. So I'm super pumped to just hear your perspective of growing up and that whole side of things. You have a fresh new nugget baby, Henry. How is Henry doing?
He's well. He's 15 months old now, so not so fresh, but still pretty new for me.
He's
But he's
adorable.
he's he's doing great. He's home with dad today, so they're having boys' day.
Good, good. Well, thanks for setting time out of your very busy schedule to do this. I appreciate it.
Of course.
I guess the most obvious place that we always start is what's your faith now, Jess? You and I have had a lot of conversations, as I told Rich, over family chats, family text messages, and I always appreciate your perspective. So you today, Jess McPheters, a new mom. Where's your faith and religion stand today?
My faith is in nature? Question mark. I feel like I am anti-organized religion. I do not think anything spiritual, well, that word can be used in many ways, but I
Yep.
do not think anything happens to you when you die other than you get recycled back into this big planet that we are on. Um, so yeah, I don't know. I feel like, is that an atheist? Is it an agnostic? I don't really know the label that I am, but I definitely don't believe in that God
Yeah.
that many people believe in.
Well, I am pumped to unpack this because I think a lot of people that I've talked to, especially more religious people, at least two people on this show have talked about how they have faith in whatever, whether it's God or Jesus or something else, but they've also talked about their connection to being out in nature, and that's the feeling that gives them the biggest sense of something bigger than themselves. So I don't think you're alone in that. I think what's different is that they're fully bought into whatever religion they're a part of. You not so
Hmm.
much. So Richard mentioned that when he was growing up, he made it an emphasis to try to go to church. What was life like for you growing up? Because there's a 1 year difference between you guys, right?
We're about 2 years exactly.
Okay.
Um, and it was actually interesting to listen to his episode because there were things he said that I didn't really remember, or not that I didn't experience them the same because we were not that far apart, but like for example, when he brought up how we used to go to Lumen Christi all the time before my parents got divorced, I was like, oh yeah, we did go to that church a lot. Um, I was probably 5 or 6 when we stopped doing that, so young enough to kind of brush it off. But I do remember feeling like a sense of this is my time with my family. My grandparents were there, my aunts and uncles and cousins at some point when they were born were there. Um, so I feel like that was something that I kind of forgot about, and listening to his experience reminded me that I did have that very young upbringing in church. But I never wanted to go to church after that.
Hmm.
I feel like my dad, depending on who he was married to, we were in some sort of Lutheran at some point and Methodist at some point, and those are all pretty much the same to me back then. And I just didn't really want to go sit in a quiet space for an hour or however. It felt so long. I feel like now
Yeah.
it's like whatever. Anyone can sit through anything that long, but
Yeah.
um,
I remember being a kid and always wearing those dress shoes, and my feet, for whatever, like my brain would just be like, my feet are itchy. and I couldn't like
Uh-huh.
scratch it. That's like my biggest memory of church as a little kid is like I can't scratch this itch that I have
Uh-huh.
for these leather stupid shoes.
Yeah, I feel like being like forced to be quiet was hard for me.
Yeah.
I was a very bouncy, loud little girl, and I don't know, but I did it because I was a kid, and you do what your parents tell you. But I don't think it was all the time. I feel like my mom, and I mean, this might not be great for this conversation, but I have a really hard time with my memory of childhood.
Hmm.
It is hard for me to remember things. I can't like have any image of her in church until they all became Catholic,
Wow,
which is
that's so
very
interesting.
interesting because I'm sure we did. I'm sure we went somewhere. I'm sure her friends that were religious like encouraged us to go to other churches. But I don't have that memory. I never did the Catholic thing. I never did that um, I can't remember what it was called. Whatever Rich and Jordan did, where they like,
Catechism, I think, or study the
yeah,
catechism,
but
or
even their like
something.
introduction to it, I wasn't part of that.
Right.
Because I was old enough to say no, and I don't think my mom wanted to argue with me. Is what it boils down to.
Oh, that's fair. Yeah, you're a tough person to argue with sometimes. I could see that, right?
Sometimes, yeah.
In a good way. I mean that
Uh,
in a good way, where it's like
I mean,
you've got your principles,
I would say I would like to say it was about principles, but it was
right?
likely
At
just
that
because
time, yeah.
I wanted to hang out with my friends and
Yeah.
not spend my time becoming Catholic at 16 years old, 17 years old. I don't even know how old I was. I remember thinking, wow, this is kind of a crazy thing that they're all just choosing to do. But yeah, so my relationship with church was okay. I wasn't super against it at a young age. I just didn't really enjoy it. I don't think, like, I know a lot of kids loved Sunday school. I didn't really feel like I loved that.
Hmm.
But I was a pretty outgoing kid, outgoing teenager. So I feel like that sense of community that a lot of people get from organized religion I wasn't like yearning for that, you
Sure.
know? Um, I feel like for me, growing up in a family that like was kind of because my grandparents are and my aunts and uncles are pretty religious, not into a way where they're going to push it on anyone, but I feel like we were always around it. And because I think my parents split, it was like we kind of got off and didn't have to go through it that way because my parents were busy too. Like they both had multiple jobs when they split up. It was pretty hard. I don't think they had time to just like, hey, let's go spend a couple hours at church on Sunday,
Right.
honestly.
Yeah, there was bigger things.
Um, yeah, bigger things, or that was just our one time together where we, didn't have to go to babysitters or they
Right.
didn't have to go to work because it was Sunday. Um, so yeah, I don't think I really started realizing my dislike for the church until I was an adult or later in life.
Yeah, I
Um,
mean that totally. I mean, I don't think that's unique. Not in a bad way, but just most people they just don't like. I was that way too, and I was a kid. Like, why would you want to wake up early,
right.
especially when football's on, like Bears Packers, like, and we're in church right now? What is happening? Um, but I think what's interesting is the different memories that you and your brother have about growing up, and especially with religion. And it's interesting to hear you talk about how you're social, outgoing. Richard really wasn't as a kid, from my understanding, and so that was more of a comfort for him. Whereas you didn't really need that community, or it sounds like you already had that built in even as a kid.
Yeah, I was pretty fortunate in that sense. I mean, he was bullied. I mean, I don't think I was really bullied. If anything, I was probably a bully when I was younger, but he was bullied from a pretty young age, and I think that I was fortunate to miss that part of mean children,
Yeah,
at least to the point of where it affected like my social life.
sure.
Um, so I do think that had something to do with, when my mom and Steve decided to become Catholic. And I wish I would have had a convo with her before this and maybe asked to remember, but I don't remember why they did that. Like
Hmm.
to me, it was just like, wait, what? Like you've been not Catholic for so long. Like, can't you just keep it up like that?
Right.
But I do think it was important to Steve's family. I remember Betty was super religious, his mom. Uh, I'm sure that played a role because they were all very much entwined in those early years of my mom and Steve dating. So,
Right. So just to recap, so we had going to that Lumen Christi church with your mom and your dad. Your mom and dad split when you're 5 or 6. Your mom finds my wife's dad, Steve. They get together and then they start to practice a little bit. I think Steve had already kind of been, maybe around the edges of Catholicism and had practiced
I,
with his ex-wife.
yeah,
Um,
I think
but
he grew up that way as
yeah, I
well.
think you're right. But for you, so when they were going through this transformation, you said you were 15 or 16 at the time.
I think so.
Okay.
Like middle high school for sure.
So do you remember having any? I mean, it's tough for like a 15 or 16 year old. I'm thinking back to what I was thinking about at 15 or 16 and like eternity and like what is my place in the world was not top of the list. But did you have,
Right.
as the juxtaposition there is that you have family that is being more involved in the church and you are not? I mean, were you thinking about any of that stuff or was it just like the normal teenage stuff?
I think that I was thinking about it more than I remember now
Hmm.
because there are things like I remember saying things like, well, I'll believe just in case.
Yeah.
Because like why not? Like it doesn't hurt me to believe. And then if it's real, I'm not going to hell.
Right.
Um, or at least that's what I told myself. I'd probably still go to hell. But I don't know. I feel like I remember those things very vaguely. I went through a period, I was a weird, weird teenager, Miles. I went through a period before I was sexually active where I thought like I was going to get impregnated somehow. So
Yeah.
I got on birth control. I was like, no, immaculate conception for me. Like, let's shut that down. Um,
Gotta watch out for those
and
those toilet seats. Wasn't that the rumor?
I don't know. I feel like I did say, but I also remember saying this stuff to my mother and like just evoking response, right? So it was also, I said the word penis a lot when I was
Hmm.
that age, just to get like my
The reaction.
parents, yeah, all riled up. And like, I think Steve loved it more than anything.
Yeah.
But I
Yeah. I
wonder
think
if some
Steve's.
of that was just me like toying with their religious emotions.
Uh,
Um, I did recently find an email I sent in like 2004. So I would have been 18, just moved to San Diego to my mom. And in the email, I said, I was pretty upset with my conditions of like moving and being lonely and all these things. And I said something about God having a plan for me. And like me reading that as 37-year-old Jess was like, what? Like it
wow.
was news to me that I had that thought, or even if I wasn't being truthful and like just saying
Wow.
that to her, I can't believe that I said it because
Yeah.
me now is someone that's so different from that person. Um, so there must have been something in there, and I likely was because of all the people around me that had always been religious. My best friend in high school, who I had been friends with since probably about sixth grade, her family was very devout in the way that they went every Sunday. It wasn't just holidays. And I did that with them, but I enjoyed it because it was like fun to hang out with my friend.
Right.
Um, but it never went further for me, other than like maybe I believed because I didn't want to go to hell. Um, I do remember I was actually talking with your wife about this like a couple weeks ago. And I can't remember if it was me or someone else in the group, but we were at a Bible study. I was definitely older, maybe like eighth grade, ninth grade. Um, and I think that was the first time I was really questioning things and asked like the leader. It was like a weird like youth group kind of thing. Like we were all like hanging out, talking about the Bible. And I don't know why I was there. I cannot tell you why I was there. I think it was in Sycamore. So that doesn't even make any more sense because why was I in Sycamore at that time?
Yeah, I want to
Uh,
say it was at like the Person's Church.
Maybe like
There was always
why was
people
I
going
there?
there. Yeah, I don't know.
I don't know why I was there, but I remember like getting the gumption to ask because I really questioned the Bible. I think at the end of the day, that's what did it for me. Like this is BS is because of the Bible. And I remember asking, well, my memory remembers me asking. It could have been somebody else asking, and now time.
Yeah.
Um, what happens if you don't believe in the Bible, but you want to believe in God? Like that has to be acceptable,
Wow, that's a
right?
really good question.
So the person that was leading this group, she said, you can't get to China without a map. And I was like, well, that's not a good answer because you absolutely could get to China without a map.
Just follow the sunset.
But I don't know. That really stuck with me again, whether I asked it or not. I really think I did, but 20 years is a long time.
Yeah.
Um, and that was the first time I feel like I was like, okay, this is all kind of a crock of shit because that's not a good answer, first of all. And second of all, I don't believe that. I don't think
Hmm.
that you couldn't like love God or be religious without believing a book that was written by men 2000 years ago. Um, and that was like the first time I feel like I really was like anti, I think, even though I might have like carried on. I do remember when my mom was becoming Catholic, we got in this one really big fight. I called her a B word,
Ooh.
which you know my mother. That did not go over well. I remember
Yeah.
I had my little VTech phone, my little green see-through VTech phone, and I like ran out of the house and like ran as far as my cordless phone would let me go, like called a friend.
I
But I
messed
was
up. I
so
messed up.
I was so mad because I didn't understand how she could join a group of people that so adamantly was like anti-gay.
Hmm.
And I remember feeling like,
And this
I
was
don't know,
before Richard had come out?
this was before Richard had come out. So this was
Okay.
when they were joining the Catholic Church. And
Oh,
Richard,
wow.
I I mean, I always said back then, like people would ask me, is your brother gay? And I would always say, he's never told me that he's gay. I would never like,
That's a
I
great
never
response.
wanted to like infer about that because I was figuring out my own sexuality. I had no idea what he was going through. And
Mhm.
I don't know. I feel like there were so many like bullies that would like talk to me about my brother, which we were like sometimes close and sometimes not close back then. But at the end of the day, always was like, I'll die for him.
Sure.
And how could you talk negatively about someone's sexuality in the first place? Like before I even really knew, I mean, there were like two gay people in our high school, right? Like I
Right.
feel like it wasn't that long ago, but it was that long ago. And it was like people were not out. People were bullied for those things. People were still called the F word constantly. Like, I don't know. I feel like for me, it wasn't so much about Richard as it was just like the gay community because I knew that my mom had lesbian friends. Like, I knew that there were people in her life that she loved, including her son, um, that were gay. And I didn't understand how she could like prescribe to something and subscribe to something that like is very much still to this day anti.
Mhm.
And that I think was what that argument was about. I remember like being like, well, how could you do this? Like you're basically like betraying humanity by becoming Catholic. Um,
How do you think you got to have that view? Because you and I grew up in a very farm country part of Illinois that is not progressive. It's getting more so, but it wasn't at the time. It's kind of like a purple area. But
mhm.
at least when I was growing up, like if you had told me, how old were you when you had this conversation? You said
Probably
18.
17, 18.
Yeah,
It's
I
like
mean
senior, junior year.
when I was going through school, and I was more indoctrinated, I think, than you were from a church perspective. But I didn't I didn't have those feeling like those strong feelings. I knew it was probably wrong, but I didn't have that strong feeling to like stand up to an authority figure. Where do you think that came from for you? Like, how did you learn that that was not the way for you?
That's a good question. I honestly don't know. I feel like coming back to bullying, like I feel like I don't want to say I'm like an empath to that extent, but when I would see people get bullied, I like felt it in my core. And
Mm,
like there were multiple times where I would stand up for just like random kids that I didn't even know because it like hurt me to watch them be bullied. I think part of that had to have been from Richard, right? Like
maybe
watching him.
subconsciously.
I think so. Part of it was like when I was in fifth and sixth grade, like that's when everyone's changing and no excuses because it's wrong. But I do remember like bullying this one girl because everyone else was doing it.
Mm,
And I feel like after that, I felt I still to this day like feel horrible for just being mean to somebody for no reason other than like what their corduroy color was, you know?
right.
Um, but kids are mean. And I don't know. I feel like especially with things like sexuality. To me, it was just like, why is this something that anyone has authority over? Like, they don't. And I remember this one kid that was out in high school. He was in a bunch of my classes, and he was actually like a real jerk. Like, I don't even remember his name at this point, but I remember like actively watching him get bullied in class. Like teachers wouldn't say stuff. He was openly gay and like the only openly gay person I knew. And it really bothered me. And I remember like kind of fighting back people. And then like he like told me to shut up one day, even, you know. So it wasn't like we were like on a team or anything. Um, if anything, he just like hated us all. But I
We had
hated that. I was like so confused by that. And I do think at the end of the day, now knowing what we know, Richard's gay. Spoiler alert.
what?
Um,
Oh my
I
gosh.
think that a lot of that had to do with like watching his pain, watching his suffering over those years. Um, Sometimes adding to it, to be honest, you
Yeah.
know, sisters and brothers are dicks to each other sometimes. Um,
You know, it's funny. My friends and I always talk. Like I feel like this is, maybe every generation says this. Like you look back in high school and junior high, especially. I know for me, it was like, oh my god, like I was not the most popular kid, but I was terrible to some people. And sometimes,
mhm,
like you said, you're dropping that fa word, and like look back and you just kind of feel just like I take a shower and like write emails to every single person and be like, I'm sorry if I
right?
ruined your stupid childhood because of
Yeah.
external pressures or whatever. Like my grandma always said this. My grandma Lynn, rest in peace. She always said that middle school is the worst time for any person. And
And I've heard that as well. And
yeah,
I think it's true. I do
yeah.
think it's true. Um,
And it's tough. I
yeah.
can't imagine like having to deal with your own sexuality that young too, knowing at
Hmm.
that time, like it's probably great now. Maybe not perfect, but it's way better than probably when you and I were in school. And just to know that
Right.
it all comes down to that is super sad. So I mean, it's interesting that you would have that thought even that young.
Yeah. Um, I do feel like the Catholic Church specifically, like just like they were so verbal about their like anti-gay and anti-abortion and like those kinds of things just really bothered me. It's like, who are you putting in these boxes? Like, what if they love you more than anyone? Like, I
Mhm.
don't love you, God. So, like, why am I any better just because I choose a P at the end of the day?
Yeah.
Like, I don't know. But I do remember having those feelings then. I feel like when I moved to San Diego and like, hi, whole new world and gay people everywhere, and people are just themselves everywhere, different selves, not just, you know, our small towns of
Yeah.
40 and 15,000 people. Then it like really blew up. And I mean, Richard came out within a couple years after we moved here to me.
Here being San
And that
Diego.
here, sorry, yes, here, San Diego,
Yeah.
here I am. And then it was solidified, right? And I was like, Mom, I swear to your God, if you do not just love this person.
Yeah.
And I don't even really feel like I had to say that to her. I mean, he explained that whole coming out process. And,
It's
you know,
tough
I
for
got a
both
phone.
people, right? I mean, it's I feel for your mom who has this faith in this huge thing, and
Hmm.
I probably feel more for Richard because you can't change what you are. You just
No,
can't. You can choose to believe in things.
you can
Faith,
pick your religion.
yeah, and I get faith and I get that whole thing, but um, it's tough. It's hard for everybody. Change is hard. New information is hard. Trying to you know combat the way that things have always been with the way things might be now is tough for any
Hmm.
situation and anything.
Yeah, and I think we've all had to go through that in different ways, but with this specific thing, I was like, I don't know. She called me and was like upset, but not in like a upset way. Like
Mm.
it was just hard, right? I think she was just like, I don't know what to do. And then thank God, again, I say thank God all the time. I'm really just talking about the sun, I think. Uh, but thank sun that she did have the priest that she had and that she was told the things that she was told by him, because I do feel like at the end of the day, if she would have gone the other way, like I would not have a relationship with my mother, right? Like I could not love somebody that didn't love somebody for their sexuality
Yeah.
because of their religion. Like no way. So I think that all worked out well. But still anti-Catholic.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. I'm gonna take a break right here. So, real quick, Jess, you are recording locally, which just means that I'm not going to be able to download your file because the internet connection is a little bit spotty. So when
Oh
we're
no.
done, no, it's fine. When you're done, you're just going to download the file and then just send it to me, and it's super easy, and I'll walk
Okay.
you through it. But I just wanted to, because I'm just looking at your line, and it just says that it's being recorded locally. So I just want to let you know,
Okay.
everything's fine though.
Sounds good. I was like, my internet does suck, especially because the wind is so crazy
Yeah,
today.
I was worried about my side as well. So we'll get through it.
Cool.
Okay. So, all right. Let me just make a footnote of where we stopped here. Stopped at 26 minutes. All right. Let's jump back in. So, not down with the Catholic Church, which, a lot of people have left it and have found other things. I guess I'm wondering, like, Catholicism is not the only part of Christianity. There's some churches that believe in uh, being gay is totally fine and they welcome
Mm-hmm.
you with open arms. I mean, was there any sort of desire to find a church that was maybe a little bit more open or that believed some of the things that you believe, maybe not as focused on like what is in the Bible verbatim? Was there any thoughts about that?
I don't think I ever had an urge to like seek that out. I wonder if it's because I don't want to say I was tainted by anything that my family did, but maybe it was just too late for me. I think so. My first two classes of college were world religion
I love that.
and philosophy. So, I'm 18, living in San Diego alone. I take these classes, or I guess I was 20 at the time. I did a jaunt back to DeKalb and then
Yeah.
came back with Richard. Those are my first two classes. And, first of all, world religion is an incredible class, incredible topic. I feel like my professor laid it out in a really great way and started with like historically the first religion that ever started. Well, after like we were writing and speaking,
Right.
um, which I believe is Zoroastrianism. Don't quote me on that. I should have looked up my history facts.
Well, that's gonna be the title of the episode. Is just the first religion was Catholicism, whatever you said.
um, but the way he laid it out, he literally like, each religion effectively like the next religion would start once somebody like met the person in this religion, took that idea to their culture, made their own religion. I just feel like seeing it laid out in such a way where, as all things with time, they evolve and take from the thing before. Um, Seen it that way, just like to me, it's so obvious why it exists and then how it's been used over time. In no way do I think there's like a all powerful being, aka God, somewhere in the universe, like looking down, watching
Mhm.
his ant people walk around. Um, so
So
I,
you think God is up there and it's just an episode of Bug's Life below?
yeah, Sky Daddy is just watching his little ants. make choices because he gave them free will.
Okay.
No, I don't buy it.
All right.
So I think because I don't buy it, because I took these classes, because philosophy was like, hey, you should use your brain and critically
Yeah.
think about things. At that point, I was like, in no way looking for that. I don't remember Richard like seeking out church in San Diego. When he said that, I was like, are you a liar? And I know he's not lying. He just remembers his past, and I do not for so many reasons.
I think
Um,
finding my
that
religion
year,
has been found out where we just give people a script and we just try to, it's like a reality show. We just try to get
uh huh,
the biggest butting of heads, and we're going
uh-huh.
that direction. So hopefully you get to stick to the script here, Jess.
I'm trying. I'm sorry. I like to improv as well. Um, but yeah, I don't remember him doing that. I feel like I was probably like a dick about that. I probably made fun of him for doing that, you know. At this point in my life, I try not to make fun of people for being religious. There was a long period of time where I would say like I don't understand how 51% of this country is so stupid.
Ooh,
But
yeah, it's tough.
they're not stupid, right?
Right.
And at the end of the day, there are so many people that believe in that God, that Sky Daddy, specifically that one, that are very intelligent and have much to offer the world. Um, so I try not to categorize people because of their religion anymore. I think that younger me definitely judged a lot more
Yeah.
because of that. Um,
Was there anything in these world religion classes and philosophy? By the way, most philosophy people were put to death. Just might want to keep that in the back of your mind.
I know,
No,
Miles.
I was a philosophy minor, so I'm right there with you. So for you, when you're learning about all this stuff, we've already talked about homosexuality and how that's frowned upon. We've talked about the Bible and that just didn't jive with you. Was there any specific things outside of what we already talked about that you're like, oh, this makes sense now, and this is a reason why I wouldn't want to get involved with this particular religion, Christianity?
So for me, I think the biggest thing, and this kind of envelops all of those topics, is the control and the oppression. I think throughout time, Christianity specifically, but all religions, including the good ones, like Buddhism, um, in a way they control society, and I see like the purpose of that. Like I understand, like the very first one was like, oh my god, what is this rain, how do we explain this? Oh, like we're gonna make up some gods to talk about. I think there were many harmless uses of that control and helpful uses of that control. Obviously society needs a little bit of corralling. um, but when it boils down to it, the control and the oppression, specifically with Christianity, for me, I think is too much. Like, how can you say, like the idea is love and peace and happiness, but so often those things are just disregarded completely to kill someone else for believing something different? Like, what? I don't get that. How do you rectify that?
Are you talking about like the Middle Ages and like the
All times. Yeah.
yeah.
Then,
So just
the
so it
Spanish
sounds like yeah,
Inquisition,
yeah, yeah. And you're a
like,
big history buff. Like you work at a museum. You took us all through like the back parts of the Chicago Museum when you were there. So like you and I like we're on the same wavelength there. Like you let me touch Abraham Lincoln's.
you
Oh,
didn't
never mind.
touch them. You
I
didn't
didn't touch
touch
him.
them.
I didn't touch him. We
You
just saw
just looked at
we
them.
just saw them. I won't even say it now. Something to do with Abraham Lincoln. We got to get really close to it at some museum. Who knows? I won't even tell you where. Um,
Yeah, who knows?
but um, excuse me. Um, so it sounds like it's maybe not necessarily the teachings, like specific teachings that bother you, but the way that the religion has existed for thousands of years. Is that fair?
I think so. Yeah, nothing specifically in the teachings, more like why are we listening to people that existed 2000 years ago that were literally all well, they said heterosexual. I doubt
Yeah.
it.
Yeah.
Heterosexual
Yeah.
men, right?
Aristotle and Plato, all your buddies, they were not so much.
No, nobody is. It's a
Right.
spectrum, just like everything, right? Some of us are like all the way over here, some of us are all the way over here, but there's lots of in the middle times.
Yeah, I believe that.
And it's the rigidity of the black and white and this societal pressure that makes you choose at the end of the day. And I think religion has played a huge role in that. For what reason? I don't know why. Let's all diddle each other. Fun.
Consensually.
Well, yeah, of course, consensually. Um, but like I suppose things in the Bible I just like kind of laughed at. Like there is actual evidence of a big flood, sure. There is actual evidence of Jesus, sure. But like, was it more than that? I don't think so. And I think history tells us that, just like science tells us the reasons. Now our brains know why it's raining. We don't need to believe in a rain god,
Yeah.
for
What about the
example.
fact, so I know that we've been focusing mostly on Christianity because that's what you and I both grew up with, but what about the fact that Jesus existed among three religions? I mean, as a history perspective, I mean, does that spark anything in you?
I think if anything, it just tells you, are you speaking of specifically Jesus?
Yeah, so the fact that
And the third,
yeah, so like I don't know if it's in the Torah, but I know Jewish people believe that he was alive. Islam,
oh,
Jesus is a
for sure.
prophet. Obviously, Christianity is a prophet, but I mean, he's like across three different religions that are over
hmm
2,000 years old. Like that always gets me. I don't know if that's God, but that's fascinating to me.
I do agree that it's fascinating. I do agree. I believe in Jesus because he was a real person, right? Like
Got it.
there is history showing us that maybe he gave everyone wine and then they like thought it was water at one point. I don't know what was really happening there. I do believe in miracles also, I guess. I think miraculous things happen all the time. I had a baby, Miles. Like I made a human inside of my body and then now he lives outside.
Yeah,
And like to me, like that's a miracle. Like
sure.
but it's explainable. There is science to
There's
these
science behind it,
things.
right?
Um
It's a miracle
a
that
lot of
you
the
can do
stuff,
it and thousands of other women and couples can't, right? Like that's the
right?
miracle, right? Right.
And I think that Jesus specifically, like, I can get down with Jesus. I've always thought Jesus was like a good person in the history text. Nothing's telling me different.
Hmm.
I don't know why the Romans wanted to kill him so much. Like, I think he threatened some things. But I do think, you brought up those three religions specifically. I think those are probably the three main
Yeah.
religions.
Yeah.
Don't
Well,
quote me on
I
that.
think well, it depends. If you're talking worldwide, I think Islam is the most popular.
Right.
But by country, obviously, it's a little bit different.
Right. So one thing I suppose that stuck out for me in my world religion class was like Islam. Okay, so Muhammad's like, hey guys, I'm your new prophet. But he
Yeah.
wanted to be a Jew at first, right? And then they like rejected him. They were like, no, no, you're not him. He definitely isn't you. He wasn't Jesus. He's not you. They're not here yet. And then Christianity was like, yeah, right, bro. Like, there's probably going to be another Jesus, but like, you're not it.
Right.
So then,
He's like,
then
peace.
I'll make my own religion.
Yeah.
Cool. Um, and like the fact that they all share a God, but like want to kill each other over that God, I don't know. That is like the whole problem, if you ask me.
I mean, it makes me think. So I'm doing I'm trying to get you talking versus talking about the things that I believe. I think people know that by now of like where I kind of stand with this, but I think it is fascinating that three religions can believe in the same God, but that it's almost like maybe man has ruined the prospect of religion, right? Like maybe
Yeah.
there is a God and he's like, "Hey dude, this is what it is, like throw out the Adam and the Eve story, right? Throw out all that nonsense, but just think about the fact that three religions have the same God. They all accept that Jesus was a prophet, if maybe not the Son of God and the Holy Trinity like Christians believe, but that part is like, dude, how over the thousands of years, how did you all come to an agreement on that one God? When before that, Romans and Greeks like Zeus, we're talking about thousands of different gods. Like, that's pretty incredible. And then you think about where in the world this all started with those two religions. Same place. So what's gone on at
Right.
those same amount of times? We have China, we have India. They're also getting involved in a lot of different types of religions. And so it's like, okay, it brings you back down to earth. It's like, okay, it's always been about where you are born and things spread.
I think so. And I think it's humans interacting. I mean, humans didn't interact for a very long time, right? And languages were very different. We weren't able to like communicate with each other, but in some way we did. And we figured it out and we started trading ideas and physical objects, material culture. And that's kind of how everything has happened, right? Like religion is this thing that is serious because it does put there's so much control, and from that control, unfortunately, oppression. um but I do think that it makes sense to me why this monotheistic religion like spread, because it is attractive, of course. Like, I would love to know that the people I love, when they die, that I get to see them again,
Wouldn't that
right?
be awesome? Yeah.
I would love to go to heaven, right? I just And I don't know. And this is why in the beginning I didn't know if I'm like considered an atheist, because I feel like some people might consider me an agnostic. Like, I'm open to possibility. I'm just not going to like spend my life living a certain way because of something men decided 2000 years ago.
Yeah, I think that's
Specifically.
fair. I don't think you have to like tick the box, right? Like you don't have to
Right.
say, agnostic, atheist, Christian, whatever.
I do
Um,
feel like Richard also said something that resonated with me. Like, at the end of the day, if there is a sky daddy, like, I do all right. I'm pretty nice. I try to make other people's lives better. I spread joy sometimes. Um, I don't think that people would just go to hell because they didn't believe in this like very fictitious seeming thing. If anything, I think that God would be like, "Hey, good job using your brain, buddy." I don't know. Like, I'm not that worried about it at the end of the day. I'm just here to live now, and hopefully during this life I can like leave a good impact. I definitely don't care about a legacy like my brother talks about. Um, but I don't feel like, for me at the end of the day, like, by proclaiming that I do not believe in God, I don't think that would condemn me in any way if there was a God.
yeah,
And if
I
it
mean,
does, then here we are. But
yeah, you're comfortable with the outcome. I mean, I think where I've landed is like Paige and I always talk about how we're scared of death because of what we were taught and what we've learned, and I think there's a comfort in no in coming to the real. And I think I'm close. The comfort and the realization of like death is it's okay. Like it is,
mhm.
if you go, you go, and you are returned to the universe in different
Yes,
atomic pieces,
yes.
and that's a beautiful thing. But also it's terrifying because Paige and I have had some loss. We lost my grandma, we lost my aunt at a very young age,
Hmm.
and it's like that sucks. That if religion is not true, then we'll never
Right,
see them again, and that
right.
that seems bogus and unfair, especially to people that maybe left a little bit too early. But then it's
Yeah.
like, do you want to spend your whole life trying to grasp for that carrot, as I always say, like the one thing that they're holding over your head. And I don't want like I feel like I'm getting a little bit too negative in response to religion, but my point in saying this is that it sounds like you have come around from a this is bad. it's an oppression of people that I appreciate and that I love, but you're not as negative towards those people that might believe something that you like. You can at least find middle ground right now. Is that accurate? Is that true?
Yeah, I think so. And I think the big part of that is the people I'm finding middle ground with are finding middle ground with me. I
See,
think
that's really cool.
before, and I'll just say it, hey Rhonda,
I was just gonna ask, are you talking about your mom?
I more than anyone else am talking about my mom because I feel like this was not always the case. Even in the last few years, we've had some arguments
Hmm.
related to religion. But I think at the end of the day, she doesn't push it on me. She does know where I'm at. And because of that, she's also willing to come halfway.
Yeah.
I don't know if either of us go halfway, but
No, I
we're
mean,
coming closer.
as a third party, I would say, not having the type of relationship that obviously you have with your mother, and seeing how these conversations play out in person or in text, like you guys have both done a lot of work. I mean, obviously, I tend to agree more with what you say,
Hmm.
but at the same time, she's put in a lot of work. And like, imagine having the conversations that we had today, 2 years ago. Like, it'd be a click,
Right,
or it'd be like, let's not talk about this right now.
right.
And I think that's been really, really cool for both sides.
Hmm.
There's still a little friction here and there. Like I mentioned, the Jesus Super Bowl ad that, um,
Uh-huh.
and there's things that come up, but I think from a outsider's perspective, like I said, I think that you guys have increased. Like before, if I were to give you guys a grade, before it was like a D plus for communication. Now we're at like an A-B plus, man. Like you
Wow.
guys
I'm
are
like
you
a
guys are
C
there.
person,
Yeah, you
so
guys are
that's
getting there.
good.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that.
Yeah, I do feel like also just becoming an adult, like, and I say that as like the last few years, like, I don't think you're an adult in your 20s,
Yeah,
even though
perspective maybe.
plenty of people are. I was not. Yeah, I feel like just being able to conversate about those things that you don't agree on is important. Even, you know, I don't know that I'm right, right? I feel like it'd be great to be like, well, I'm right and you're wrong. But that's not the case in so many of these conversations where there's like, I'm here and you're here. So I'm open to listening. But at the same time, I do think it's important to like speak our truths. And, for me at the end of the day, now, I don't understand how you can like give any money to some organization that has been so bad, like the Catholic Church. So like for her and I think the part that's going to be the hardest moving forward is like anytime she brings it up, I'm going to bring up the things about the church that appall me, and I don't think she loves that. So it's finding that way to talk about it, which I think she has done a really good job, right? Is in no way do I think she like prays for me to become religious. Like I think she knows that that
I
ship
bet she
has
does.
sailed. You
Yeah,
do think
yeah,
so? I'm gonna
1000%.
ask her. I'm
No,
gonna
because
ask her.
no, I think that's not just for your mom. I think this is most Christians. Like you're praying. Like the whole point of Christianity is to tell other people that don't believe in
Right,
Jesus that Jesus exists. Like that's it. Like believe in
right. Spread
Jesus,
the word.
spread the word, and good things will happen. And now you tell other people. So I guarantee she's talking about it, but I think the difference now is that she understands your perspective and you can understand her perspective. Like faith is such a freaking cool thing, man. Like it is
Uh-huh.
really, really cool to not have any proof on something. And you could say it's stupid, like right, like you and I have talked about before. Like it's super easy to dismiss everybody that's religious, but
Hmm.
that faith is a really cool. Like you and I have faith in climate change. You and I have faith in the fact that all these scientists are right. Like we, obviously you can prove some of that stuff. It's a little bit different,
Right.
but that's my point. I've never read those articles about how climate change
No,
is gonna, like I've never read it.
we're trusting in
I
that.
have
Yeah.
faith that these scientists are telling me what's right, and hopefully they're correct. So,
Yeah,
um,
that's true.
but yeah, I mean, I guess my point in this is I do think that there's probably something that she's always going to want to have happen, to maybe like something happens, or you like, I don't know, just to
She
believe in
did
Jesus.
always say, wait until you have a baby and then you'll believe in God. She
Changes a lot of
always said
people.
that.
Yeah.
She said that my whole life. And like up until 2 years ago, I didn't think I wanted to have a baby. So I was like, you're crazy, lady. That's never happening. Now that I've had Henry, I mean, the thought of losing him obviously crosses my mind because I'm crazy and have horrible anxiety.
That's everybody. That's every new mom, I would imagine. Like,
Yeah, I mean, it's going to last until I die, I'm
yeah.
sure. But at the end of the day, it's not enough to even make me like flicker
So no
towards.
thought, no thought at all about.
No, I mean, I worry, but at the end of the day, I do feel like, we're all moving forward and towards death. I mean, it is a beautiful thing to be able to realize it is a part of life. I have been very fortunate and I've lost a couple of people in my life, but a very small amount. And they were aunts and uncles that I was not as close to as a lot of people. That I know people that have lost like multiple friends, like best friends. Like I've never had to go through that kind of loss. So I don't want to say I would never go there because maybe there is something that would happen that would make me feel that way. But at the end of the day, you said it perfectly. I think when we die, we do go back into the universe and our atoms and energy expand and contract into the world again. So we are reborn in a way. I mean, I don't think our thinking brain continues on. And that's the
Hmm.
hard part. That's the
Right.
part people are fearful of. I think at the end of the day,
We're the most attached to the thinking part because we talk to ourselves literally all day.
yeah, exactly. And like I pray, but not to a God. It's me talking to myself, right?
Hmm.
And I don't think it's prayer, but it's me like working through things and
Yeah.
sending out the things that I want to receive. I do think there's something to be said about affirmations and we didn't really get into all the hippie energy stuff, but I do think for me, like, because I believe in that, and I don't know, I think that's not religion. It's not organized religion, but it's something. I don't think when I die, like, there's no purpose happening to me. Like, I do think my energy going into the earth or the air or whatever is purposeful, is meaningful.
Well, don't act like I didn't forget about the hippie shit. We're coming back to that right now. So you mentioned at the beginning that you have faith in nature. Um, how did you get to that? I gotta imagine getting out of the Midwest, and you're always connected to the ocean and water. I mean, I assume that has a lot to do with it. But how did you get to the fact that you have faith, really, really, in nature?
I don't honestly know. I don't think it was psilocybin, like my brother.
For those that don't know, that is mushrooms.
I feel like I've always felt like a connectedness with, I don't, it's hard to explain. Like I work, with historic objects, with cultural heritage, and now specifically I work with archaeological materials that are 11,000 years old, right? And I like feel connected to these things in a way that's really hard to explain. Like this sounds crazy, but like
Can't wait.
when I'm somewhere, whether it be by the ocean, walking in the street, out on a hike, like I feel the lives that have lived there before. Not like I don't see dead people or anything like that, but I just feel a sense of connectedness to like everything that's ever happened, I guess, if that's
Interesting. Do you? I mean, that has to be a part of just your education and having an
I think
appreciation for
so.
people that have come before you. That whole thing.
I think so. I think that like, you know, the sun, that I literally can feel the energy of the sun pulsing through me. Like I think
That
that
that's a
the
sunburn.
ocean, well, and a sunburn, but like the ocean is the same way, right? Like I've always felt connected to the water and like I had to be near it. And I didn't always know what that was. I still don't really know what it is, but I feel my best and my truest when I'm in nature, whether that be camping, hiking, whatever. I don't get to do it enough. But even if I'm just looking out my window at the ocean, which I'm so grateful and fortunate to have, I don't know. There's like a sense of magic about that that is really hard to explain. I can't even believe I just tried.
No,
I
I
sound
no,
really foolish.
you don't at all. I think a lot of people would have that same sort of thought if they were trying to describe this ethereal feeling that you obtain when you're looking at the ocean, when you're on a hike, when you're out and about.
Feeling
I,
the sunset, I feel like, right? Like
yeah, I mean, you guys are big on the sunset.
everyone is like everyone like watching people gather for the sunset is incredible, right?
Yeah,
Like every walk of life does
it
it.
is it is really really cool to see because you guys are in OB in San Diego. It's a bunch of weird people, a bunch of hippies, but all the good types of hippies, and
Yeah,
yeah,
but
they all
also
come out.
all people come
Yeah,
out and drive here for it. Before I ever lived in Ocean Beach, I came here and elsewhere to get to the sunset. It was like always like a race to the sunset,
oh
right?
really?
And it wasn't just for like that picture. I love taking photos of sunsets, but it's for the feeling and the beauty and like the gratitude that I send out when that sun is going down. Like, thank you so much for this day. I am so grateful for you. I can't wait to see you again tomorrow. So I suppose in a way that is like a kind of worshiping something. Um,
Who did that? The Egyptians? Did they worship the sun?
I mean, I think all religions in a way worshipped the sun
Probably.
before the monotheism came into play.
Yeah, bunch of nerds. Um,
Yeah,
so, so the last question I have for you, actually, I have two more questions if you have time. Um, the
I
f-
have time.
the first question is we've talked a lot about feeling of um, that godlike presence or that feeling, however you want to say, faith in nature, whatever. We've talked a lot about being on Earth. Do you have any thoughts of beyond Earth and like how we fit into the universe? And the reason why I asked this question is because Richard was very definitive. He doesn't think about that stuff. He thinks about what's on
Hmm.
Earth, the problems that are on Earth, and what his legacy might be. Where do you stand?
So I very much think about that stuff, but in a philosophical sense, I suppose. I think our human brains have come so far in what, I don't know, let's call it 35,000 years. Here we are. I don't think that we can understand enough to know yet, right? Like, I assume you mean like why are we here? Is that like
Just
universe?
anything, yeah, literally any like we're small compared to black holes. Do
Yeah,
we
I
go back?
mean,
Do we go back into the universe? Do we stay here on Earth? Like just like literally anything you could think about with the universe. I'm just wondering because we focus so much of like earthly things, the sun, the
right,
water, nature, all that.
right. I feel like I do think about it. If if I could explain it based on a movie, I think like the movie Interstellar
Mm,
is a really good way to explain how I kind of feel. I don't think our brains know yet. Like, what is the fifth dimension, the next dimension? Like, I don't think we can understand it. What is a black hole? It's something, right? Like, I don't have, did you listen to the recording of what it sounds like in there? Because it's
it
terrifying,
is terrifying.
but also incredible. And in no way, I guess that also like helps my definitive, I don't subscribe to organized religion or God is like, there's no freaking way. It's just us here. Like, it's too massive. It's too expansive for that to be true, right? And like, yeah, we have this awesome sun that has now given us all of this life and all of this beauty um, just by existing and then the right atoms like coming into contact. But that's like one, I guess, awesome part. Like, there's black holes or something entirely different. Like we're just one Milky Way, right? Of I don't know how many Milky Ways are there, Miles? Like probably millions.
There's only one.
Well, you know
Different,
what I mean.
different galaxies. Yeah.
Yeah, different galaxies, not the same. But who knows? I feel like our brains just aren't able to figure it out yet. I don't think that that will always be the case if we don't kill ourselves off first.
Oh,
I
good.
do think,
Let's end on a high note.
yeah, the Earth will be here much longer than us, in my opinion.
Yeah, I think you and I are good. And I think Henry's good. Henry's kids, I don't know.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah. Don't have kids, Henry.
Speaking of Henry, um, what's your plan when it comes to religion? I think Ocean Beach is probably a little bit easier when it comes to just like acceptance and like there's a whole lot of options that you have versus like where you and I grew up. So I'm assuming
Yeah.
that his just by living there and being exposed to different things, different beliefs, it'll be helpful in these conversations. But like, what are you going to tell him when he asks about someone dying or why his friend got baptized and he didn't? Those types of conversations.
Yeah, that is something we've thought about a lot. Isaac and I are pretty similar in our belief system or non-belief system, however you want to look at it. At the end of the day, I don't think we want to control that narrative for him. I think that while we're not baptizing him and we're not pushing any specific religion on him, I think there is a beauty of you like finding that stuff out on your own as a kid, right? Like my mom and dad didn't push me into religion. And yeah, they like nudged at some point, but because they didn't push, I am who I am today. Um, I feel like, I don't know, as his parents, we're supposed to guide him on the right paths, but what are the right paths? I think I just want him to figure it out on his own and like have us as like a soundboard or whatever he needs us for, really. If he woke up one day and was like, "Hey, I want to go become Catholic," I would like to say that I would just be like, "Okay, let's learn more about that." I'm sure because I'm me that I would be like, "What? No." Um, but that's something I'm really working on as a parent and person is like letting go of control.
Yeah.
And, I don't want him to grow up in a controlling environment where I was like anti-religion and never even let him explore it because that's not my role for him. I'm just like a guide for his person. And wherever life takes him, I want to support him and, help him get to religion if he wants to find his own religion.
Hey, hashtag
See what I
FMR.
did there?
I loved it. You brought it right back. You must have gone to
um,
school.
or something. But yeah, I don't know. I have thought about that a lot. I don't think we even ever toyed with the idea of baptizing him. I think if we did, it would just be for our families. Like
Yeah,
it
it'd be
wouldn't
for
mean
show. Yeah.
anything to us, and that's why we ultimately chose not to. I don't think babies live in like limbo if they die. Also, that helps with that.
Yeah.
um,
Yeah, it's a very Catholic thing.
but I'm sure my mom will want to take him to church at some point. Ultimately, at this point, I've said no just because humans are gross and COVID is a thing.
Yeah,
But
it's
I
kind of
think I would,
it's an easy out, I think, right now.
yeah, but I think I would be open to it because
Yeah,
if
like
that
why
was a bonding thing for them, like, great.
yeah, and what
He's
would be
still going to be
the
his own person. Like, I'm me and I grew up under the same roof with my parents. So,
yeah, honestly, like if he goes to church with Steve and Rhonda, like worst thing that could happen. I mean, I can't think of it, like he comes out of there at age
he
5 and
gets
is
to
like
try
it's like,
wine.
yeah, yeah, like yeah, he gets drunk. Sorry,
Like,
that's the body of
fun.
Christ. Yeah, that's the body of Christ. No, I shouldn't have said that. That's a little bit that was aggressive. Anyway,
I liked
so
it.
yeah,
I liked it.
yeah, I know you did. Um, I think the way that you view the world is unique and it's helpful for me to understand it too because I know the background of the family and I know that you and I are kind of on the same page, but it's also been comforting to me to hear about how other people deal with death. And I think for you specifically and my wife, like you guys have both talked about, this is like way off in left field, but you guys have talked about how you want to donate your bodies to like these fields because these companies will
Mm,
want human corpses to see how they decompose to like help law enforcement. So like they'll put you in a trunk and they'll see like how'd you decompose, and then they'll like write it down and say like, oh, it took X amount of time for this person, and now we know, and so now we can help other people that are living. And I think that's really really cool. So I, all right, so I lost Jess, got her back. We're just gonna close this thing out and pray that everything works.
Pray to
Um,
God.
pray to Sky Daddy. Um, so I was talking about the death and how you and Joe have made me more comfortable with death because of how you're just more involved in nature, and I just think that's really cool. And I think beyond that, I'm just really really excited that we're able to have this conversation and talk. And who knows, maybe
Mhm.
we'll be having it again because this won't upload.
I sure miss you,
I
buddy.
miss you too. I miss you too. I miss San Diego. I miss seeing Henry. I miss Isaac. You guys have an amazing place in OB, and I can't wait to come visit again.
I can't wait to have you. I love you so much.
Love you too. And again, thank you so much for doing this.
Of
All the best to
course.
Henry. All the best to Isaac. And we will catch up soon.
All right, I'll talk to you soon.
All right. See you, Jess.